Hey, I'm Sean, speedcubereview.com. I'm going to be going under the name Mr. Cube Review today because we have another Sean with us. We have a few other people, so I'm going to introduce them. We first have Cameron Brown, who runs Speed Cube Shop. Say hi, Cameron.
Hey.
We have, and I'm going to try to pronounce as best I can, so I apologize, but Dror Vomberg?
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And then Sean Hartman is also here. Say hi, Sean.
Hello.
We are going to be talking about a few different things. One thing that we'll kind of just start off with, I want to figure out how and when everyone got into cubing. So I'll just start with the order I went. Cameron, how did you start and what inspired you to actually start cubing?
I started in 2006. I was in elementary school and we had field and track days. And a few of my friends were just hanging out, and one of my friends pulled out, it was a really weird Rubik's Cube edition. There was no white side, it was silver. It was some special edition cube. We were trying to learn how to solve it. None of us could figure it out. We were butchering, trying to get like one face, not even a layer. And then we forgot about it. And then the Pursuit of Happiness movie with Will Smith came out, and that re-sparked interest when I saw him solving the cube in the back of a taxi cab. And at that point, I went to the store, bought myself a Rubik's Cube, and just found, I went to a website called chessandpoker.com, which is still active. It's a horrible tutorial. The last layer algorithms don't even all work. So if you got a certain scenario, like it was a double edge, adjacent edge flip, you couldn't solve the cube with their guide. So that was pretty much how I got started.
Awesome. And so that tutorial, was that then CFOP or was it something else?
No, it was pretty much like you get all the corners permuted, and then you get all the edges oriented, then you flip the edges, and there'd be like an H or like a fish pattern, they would call it. And I actually used that technique for, 2 years, like a year and a half actually, until one of my friends learned CFOP. And so I got that method down to about like 35-ish seconds. And that was like the max I think you could get with that kind of method. So CFOP definitely is where the barriers started to get broken.
Okay. So moving on to how did you start cubing?
Oh, well, I was born in the 80s, so pretty much everyone has a different cube or a couple of cubes because it was the fab over there. And I just remember always playing with it as a toy. And when all the other guys just left it and went to do something else, like maybe G.I. Joes or Autobots or whatever, I just continued with the cube because I liked the idea of it having 6 sides and only 6 colors, but impossible to solve in my age. And one of my neighbors actually taught me how to solve the first 2 layers. And so every time I wanted to show someone that I can solve it, I just solved the first 2 layers, and then I went somewhere else and disassembled the rest of the layer and then reassembled it together, and I showed it that I actually solved it, even though I didn't really solve it, just to give myself a little pat on the shoulder. And I think when I was like 15 or so, I bought a new cube which has an instruction sheet with all the algorithm to solve it. And actually, the instruction sheet was the last layer, the last most ending was actually the other way around. But I still was able to solve it because I just figured out the twist should be, I think, counterclockwise instead of clockwise. So I knew how to solve it that way. And from there, I just solved it like maybe 2 or 3 minutes and never really thought about speed cubing because I didn't know there is speed cubing or anything in that sort. And I think close to 2002, at the end of 2002, I started to figure out there's an internet with another cubers all around, and that's where I got together and started to really do a speed cubing or blindfold cubing in my version.
Okay. And in 2004, you set and actually the next year, you set the national record for
2003. No, the first competition ever was in 82, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one was a Dutch Cube Day on, I think, October of 2002. It was an official. And then the next official Rubik's championship was in 2003 in August in Toronto. And that was the first competition I participated. and that's where I won the first place on 3x3 and 4x4 blind.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Sean Hartman, when did you
Oh,
start cubing? What got you into it?
well, okay. Well, I'll say I first got a cube when I was like 7, so that was like around 2009. But I had like no idea like how to do it at all. My mom had said like, oh, I got 3 sides once or whatever, and then one of my mom's friends took the stickers off and put it back on. I was like, oh, now it looks all like crap now, or whatever. And then I forgot about it for years. But when I was like 11, I was like searching everywhere to find it. I was like, I want to learn how to solve it because I saw videos on YouTube, and we couldn't find it anywhere. So we got another one from Barnes and Noble, and I watched like the tutorial over and over and over, and so like I just kept watching the tutorial, and eventually I solved it, and I like kept solving it, and then I was like, well, I can actually do this. And but the thing is, I knew how to solve a cube there. This was like in 2013 for about a year. Then I was like, I was not more of like not really much of a speed solver. I was more like of a solver in general, and so I kind of like lost interest like after a year or so. But then in like when I was in ninth grade, I think in 2015, I saw someone in my orchestra had like a cube and they were like solving it, and I was like, whoa, I used to do that. Maybe I should try that again. And then I started like really trying to get into speed cubing then, and ever since then I've been like really interested. So like I don't know if I'd be speed cubing now if it wasn't for that one person in my orchestra that happened to have a cube.
I I completely forgot about that because I'm a musician. What'd you play?
I play violin.
Oh yeah, we have to collaborate someday. We'll do something. Well, you really took off like once you got like, just a couple years into doing it, and what like I'm looking at your sheet right here, and you're really all around. Have really great times. What would you say is the thing that you focus most on?
Well, the thing is that I just like to do every event. Like I like to switch it up all the time. I every week like I'm doing every single event. Like I really like to do the I think there's like some online competitions that I like to do like every week, and I try to like at least do every event every week like in those competitions to keep up with my abilities. And so like sometimes it's like I'm really into 7x7 or megging. Sometimes I'm really into like multi-blind or 5 blind or clock or megamix. Like I just like to switch it up all the time.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about blind as well, and let me ask you about 3 blind. So what you've been solving blind for a while, actually set the world record in 2003. And so what method were you using then to solve and I guess transition from then till now what sort of changed in that time? So let's start with in 2003, what did you do for that world record?
So when I first started to speed cube or see how fast I can go, I did the normal 3D 2 layers in OLL, and then I found out that I wasn't really fast and at speed cubing, normal speed cubing. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll try something else, see if I can do that. And I saw there's a version of cubing that you do blindfold. I thought that was pretty cool to see if everybody can hardly solve it, but to solve it blindfold would be even crazier. So I started thinking and searching the internet to see if there is any solution yet. And I couldn't find anything except a strange site by a guy whose nickname was Steve Hands with a Z. You actually orient and the corners in a way that you can only use 180 moves on the left and right and up and down. And then front and back, you can do 90 moves. And then you use algorithms that only work on those moves to permute all the edges and then all the corners. Okay, so you have actually 4 sets of cycles to do. It is the 3 cycles for each one of the series. So you have to memorize four series of 3 cycles. It took me about half an hour to memorize everything, then another half hour just so my first call was an hour or so. My better way to memorize the cube and solve it. And from there, I progressed, then moved to 4 minutes and then 3 minutes. And actually that's from 2007 with Stefan Pochman there. And the next time I tried to see if I can improve myself, I use algorithms to cut down the amount of recycling I used. And the next improvement was when I cut down the orientation altogether and just use permutation, but didn't myself to only move the up down, the left back and up down in 180 circles, but to use all the available moves, and then just try to find out if I can use the algorithms without changing what I know. And it worked out pretty good. And that's pretty much the hand 3 cycle that I use to this day, even though I don't really practice it.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, what was that, the cube light speed that was in 2007?
Oh,
What? I'm curious. I tried looking that up. And
Yeah. Well, the cube light speed was actually, it was a big game like this. Okay, I have it somewhere in my storage area. And that every center of the cube has a place you can press your finger, right, like a button or so, but it was inside the cube, not on that level, but pretty much inside, and the cube was bigger. You can flip a switch to put it on, and then you have a couple of different versions of the puzzle, but the most known one is that you need to press the button that shows the light as fast as you can, and it starts from a very low speed until a very fast speed. So the intention of the creators was for you to do like this and find the right button to push every time. And so when it gets faster and faster, you pretty much lose the ability to do it fast. And that's why they limited the cube to only 999 available presses until the cube says you finished it, because there is no higher limit. They actually made it a competition to see which one gets the highest number of clicks. So if you got it wrong in one time, the cube itself will tell you how many clicks or how many button press you did. So, and they kept a record on the outside table of the auditorium where the competition was. So at the end of the day, they gave a €1,000 prize to everyone who got the highest level. And Stefan Pochman found a nice version of how to do it the fastest way, because the light actually shone on surfaces like a wall or your hand. So what we did was actually hold the cube like this, okay? And then you can see the 3 layers of the cube in front of you, and then the last 3 on your hand. So you actually don't need to move the cube anywhere. You just see the light and you press it like this, or like this, until it gets to 999. And whenever it gets to that, we just show you. You have to show it very fast to the competition organizer, otherwise you won't hear it and you won't believe you. So everybody just sat on the floor trying to figure out the best way to do that. And whenever I got to 999, I immediately put it in his ear. He was pretty surprised, and then he heard it. And me and Stefan both got to that. So they actually, instead of splitting the prize, they gave us both €1,000 with this big announcement page that you saw.
I need to definitely get a hold of one of those and try that, because I saw a couple pictures of it, and yeah.
And the next year, or the next competition in 2009, they actually got the version 2 of the puzzle, which goes to 10,000 instead of 1,000. So it took a bit more time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to go back to blind real quick. Sean, so what do you do now for blind? Because let me pull it up again. Right now, what's your official record for blind?
It's a 30.77, I think.
Okay, so what is your method for doing blind?
So I do like for corners, I do full freestyle, right? But for edges, I haven't finished learning all of the freestyle algs. And so I do the M2 method, but I also do a lot of like comms, like using the DF buffer like as well, because I don't know all of the comms using that while I'm learning the UF, like, because there's like what I'm trying to do is try to get every single like comm so like it's like good, because I don't want to like fully learn DF, which is now considered not very good of a buffer, and the UF comms are actually like really good. So what I do is I memorize my corners using like images, and then I memorize all the edges using audio. Then I execute the edges using the DF buffer using M2 as well as comms. and then I execute the corners using the UBL buffer with freestyle.
Why is the DF buffer not considered as, is it because of like the D moves you'd have to do with it?
Yeah, like just a lot of the comms are a lot more awkward and like slower to execute. Like I've probably learned about 25% of the UF comms, and like just thinking of a lot of the DF comms that I would do, it's like just a lot easier and faster to execute, at least now. Like with the cubes that we have now, like you can do all these sort of S moves and E moves and stuff really quickly, and like you can do comms in under a second using stuff like moves like that.
I've done very slow solves with commutators, just like intuitive. I have to sit for about 10 seconds, figure out what I need to do, and I try to do it. I started with old Pachman, complete full Pachman, then I went to M2, tried turbo for edges, didn't actually like it. So I guess for everyone here, instead of me calling on people, if anyone wants to speak up, what would you suggest as a way for someone starting to learn? Do you think full old Pachman's fine? Do you think they should go right to something more, I guess, detailed like M2? I guess for everyone, just who ever wants to speak up, what would you suggest with that?
Well, I'll say like when I first started, I watched this tutorial. I think it was Noah Arthur's, and this was in 2016. I was like, I want to learn how to solve blind. It's like so hard. They're having it at competitions. I need to learn how to do this. And I watched that. I was like, for days, I was trying to get it down. And like the M2 method was really confusing me. So I don't know. But then eventually I actually was able to understand like how to do it using OP. I think like the setup moves using old Pachman are a lot like easier to understand, at least starting out. But maybe like depending on the person, they might understand like old Pachman or M2 for edges like better starting out. But I'll definitely say like when you first start learning old Pachman for edges is probably a lot easier, and then old Pachman for corners as well.
So I started off with Eric Lineback's tutorial for M2 in old Pachman. I learned how to do blindfolding. Let me think. Jeez, I don't know. It was when I was still competing a lot, so it would have been probably back in like 2014-ish, 13-ish. I never actually completed one in competition, but I was doing around like 2 minutes, 2.5, just at home, and it was also fun. Actually, I need to probably like relearn it and try to practice again because it was pretty enjoyable. And just to be able to say you can do it blindfolded is kind of cool. That's like the first thing that people always ask when they see me with the cube. Like, oh, can you do it blindfolded? And it's like, yes, I can.
I get that. Although I feel like I don't always, I'm like 50-50 for successes. So I'm like, yes, I can. Hopefully this works this time.
Yeah. Wait, I was also going to say something that reminded me. I think the first time I ever tried to do a blindfolded solving competition, I actually was off by like 2 moves. It was like this. Like I literally undid the last setup move wrong, and it was like a 9-minute something. And then I was like, no, I like did an F instead of an
So
R
it wasn't
something.
even like wrong pieces. It was just setup.
I had 3 twisted corners, and I set it up to like do R prime, D prime, RD over and over. And then I undid the move that I did to set up the 3 corners all on top like wrong. And it was the DNF. And it took like, I think
have the same,
a while later to get it.
I had the same idea or the same version, but it wasn't the 5x5.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I actually practiced for 3, 4, and 5 blindfold. And officially, I never solved the 5x5. And the closest I ever got was like after 40 minutes of memorizing and solving, I did the reverse way of 3x3. Okay, so this was my mistake. So instead of going that way, I went the other way, and it was almost perfect. And actually, it was the second attempt because the first time, they only led us to one attempt. There wasn't any WCA regulation or anything. So because I didn't do, I messed up the 5x5, the first one in a worse scenario than this one. I asked them if you can give me another shot. And the organizer, Dan Gosby, he said, okay, sure, if you want. And they took one of the judges, which was like senior people, which actually volunteered for the event. And because everything else was over, we did it on one of the hotel's room. And he waited with us for 40 minutes to see me, and at the end go like this, and it wasn't solved. So every time I practiced for like a year for one competition, I had one chance, and 2003, 2005, 2007, I wasn't able to solve it.
I
Always
think
had something bad going up.
I was like watching I think it was like some documentary or something of like Worlds 2005, I think it was, or something, and they were
Yeah,
showing like a lot
cubers.
of, yeah, they were showing like a lot of like your like stuff in blind and stuff, and I saw like five blind, how you like kept DNFing every time, and
Yeah.
then I looked, I was like, I saw you still kept and didn't get a success in the competition. I was like, wow,
There was
Yeah,
that's
well, yeah.
unfortunate.
I'll grab a 5x5 real quick. Yeah, there was a competition just recently. I haven't done 5x5. I still actually need to learn how to do four blind, but I forgot her name. It was her first. She hadn't had a five success yet, and it was kind of what you had with the 3x3, where it was solved, but it was like this. It was a setup move, and it was just so hard to watch that. There was also actually, Dror, you also set the 4x4 blind world record in 2003 as well. Is that
Yeah.
like, were there methods back then that are as common and well known today, or did you kind of have to figure out a lot on your
No,
own?
actually, on 3x3, as I said, there was only like my method, or maybe Hartman wasn't even available that time. So 3x3, I found the defense, and 4x4, I actually just took the idea of dividing it to sub assemblies, and then found, I don't know where, I found the same idea of solving the 4x4 centers and edges for the same way. So you have to memorize another set of cycles. And I just took the worst possible algorithm to solve it. Obviously, it wasn't very efficient, and the memorization took forever, but it still worked. So 5x5 was just a combination of 4x4 and 3x3. However, there was as you know, two parity problems with 5x4 that I needed to find new algorithms for them. So I used normal solving algorithms for the last layer, and I moved all the pieces to the last layer to solve it as a setup moves, and then move them back after I solved it, and that's how I knew how to solve the 4x4 blindfold.
Of there being a story where there was about being time limits in 2003. Were there time limits in 2003 for how long you had to memorize it?
No. Actually, let me go back a bit. When I first started solving and I put my records on the unofficial record board, a German TV show that works with the world records saw that and asked me if I can participate in their show in Munich, but not on the Rubik's Cube because it was already known for everyone. So they asked me if I can solve the 15 puzzle in blindfold. Actually, if you know the 15 puzzle, this one, okay? And they took me against someone else called Ralph Lauer, and he actually had a record in Guinness World Record for solving, I think, 3 cubes in a row. And he did that by memorizing them for a specific amount of time and then solving them all together. And they thought about using that method for the competition in Toronto for their first WC competition. But then they figure out that if anybody can memorize it fast enough, then he can use whatever he needs, and the competition won't be the same as just doing it from start to finish without time limit on memorization. So they combine it to the normal solving that you know today, which is memorize as much as you can, then solve as much as you can, and the limit, if there was, I'm not sure even there was a limit on the competition, was to the whole event from start to finish.
For the one thing that I've been trying to get into, although I haven't done big cubes, is multi-blind. I bought a bunch. I started practicing just for one competition. I got 4 out of 6, and 2 of them just had like twisted corners. So I'm considering it 6 out of 6. Just officially, it's 4 out of 6. And I guess I don't know if you do multi-blind, Cameron. I don't know if you do. So, Sean, if I think how many? What's your record, Sean? 20? No.
Officially, it's 50, or it's wait, it's 16 out of 19 officially.
Okay. So when I do multi-blind, I end up having to create all these different like rooms where I have images for each one and there's an image in each room. Is that what
Yeah.
you do for your
Yeah,
multi-blind?
yeah, that's what I do as well. I feel like in multi-line, that's what I started with. I got the recommendation to rooms, and that was like the only way I was able to effectively memorize four blind, five blind, multi-blind, all of them. I use rooms for that.
Could you explain how that works? Like what exactly are rooms?
Well, not everybody does it the same way because I know some people like Mark Boyanowski like have aphantasia and can't even like see the stuff, right? But uh like in general, like even they like think of the rooms and like their memorization in that. But like me, I can visualize stuff, so I think of like my first image like which is two letter pairs in one location with like I actually have two images in each location, so like an image and an image, one location, image, one location, and I kind of do like two cubes per room. So like my first two cubes I'd memorize in my bedroom, and then the next two in like the hallway or the bathroom or like something like that. And then like I think my whole house I like really divided up to make like 20 something rooms all inside of that. I feel like the hardest part about it is like just all with doing a lot of cubes, it's trying to remember like what you memorized like 10 minutes ago. I was like, well, what did I do then? You come back to it and you're like, okay, it was that. But like, and then you come back to the layers like, why did I still forget that? And then you keep like, that's the toughest thing, honestly.
With the way I think of what rooms are is just creating more of a solid image. And I'll tell a story myself. So I just finished my master's in music, and my main paper, my thesis was on memorization techniques for music. But the one thing that sort of surprised me was there's literally a long-term and short-term parts of your memory. It's not just like the thing people say to give names to other, but there's literally a long-term and short-term. And so unless you're able to execute the cube in under 30 seconds, that short-term memory is going to fly by pretty fast, and go away. So the idea of rooms is you're creating images that creates more of a concrete picture that you can put in that long-term and hold on to it longer. I know some people, so there's other things like creating stories or scenes or different situations. Have you tried any of those, or what's your thoughts on those over creating rooms?
Well, I feel like I feel like using rooms, it's not like it's like a mix of everything because sometimes like I just remember it and I don't know why, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with the location, but like sometimes just maybe it's just thinking of the location in general does like just bring the thoughts of that memorization back. But like I'll say there's certain images of mine that literally have like smells that I associate with them as well, which is kind of interesting. But I feel like with stories and stuff, I think the actual literal location thinking of a memo like or memorization really like helps like you recall it a lot better than just like trying to think of what story you were thinking in your head or what sentence or whatever. Like after it might have been like 10 minutes into your memorization, you're executing this.
Yeah, that makes sense. I asked once in the blindfold Facebook group how long people remember things usually, and a lot of people are saying a couple days it's still in their mind. And even to this day, I've realized the competition was like half a year ago, and I can still kind of imagine what like an image almost looked like. It's not there anymore, but I can almost still see it.
Yeah, I feel like my rooms like sometimes like I see like vague images of like memos I've had from a while ago, but I don't remember what the letter pair was, but like it's just kind of feelings of what it was like. Well, like I feel like after an attempt I just like completely try to like not think about it unless one of my friends is like we're like joking about like some memo we had they were in our memo or something. I sometimes do. But, like I kind of just try to completely forget about it because I'm probably going to do another attempt soon that like has the same room, so I just try to like block it out as much as I can.
That makes sense. Cameron, I'm gonna talk to you for a second because it's been a little bit. So for multi-blind, I purchased Speaky Shop like about 12. What was it? They were Yulong version 2s because I like that sort of stable magnetic feel. Um,
I just need to say, how are you going to tell me that you retained your memorization from a competition how long ago? And you have a hard time remembering what cubes you ordered.
there's a lot of things behind me. I don't do multi-blind that often. So what kind of cubes do you like? Do people order multi-blind, like bulk sets of cubes? What do you see most often? And I guess even how does that work if someone's ordering multi-blind cubes like that?
Yeah, typically we see there's two kinds of people. There's people that have decided that they are dedicated and they want like GTS 2Ms. It was a pretty popular option for a lot of people. And then we see also some people do the GTS 3Ms, but the speed can be a bit much for some. But that one actually has been, surprisingly to me, a more popular option recently. But typically we see like things like Sail Ws and Guanlongs and a little bit like budget entry cubes, just for those that are not too sure if they're ready to commit to a higher price tag cube. Obviously, we have the cube covers and we have our own, like, the Speed Cube Shop blindfold. So we just kind of try to make it all easy to get into it. And that's something we definitely do a lot of. But yeah, it's always interesting. We've had some people that have ordered quite a bit of cubes and try to do some attempts. So it's pretty interesting to see like what people's requests are, because it just always reinforces for me that people's turning styles are so unique, to where when I was actively blind solving, I was using a Cam Cuber Guhong version 2 at that point, which I had set up to be like really nice and controllable, because that was before magnets and everything. So the last thing I wanted was to overshoot. And it's funny because when I was doing my blind solve attempts in competition, I'd mentioned I never had achieved one. So I left out that, if I'm recalling correctly, that I was pretty much like one turn off. And it was like one of those situations where you make the extra turn by accident and you're just sitting there like, wait a minute, like, is that it? Like, was that supposed to happen or not supposed to happen? But it's been interesting too, just kind of on a side note, listening to you guys talking about the memorization, because I'm a very visual learner and like I memorize things visually, but I never actually went that route. I think that the tutorial that Eric Lineback taught, I would always memorize like words and phrases. So like each letter for the sticker I would turn that into a word. And I would have just the longest, most obscure, nonsensical like sentence in my head. And it was just like, I think that was why I struggled so much, because these sentences were so just weird sometimes that it's like it didn't make sense, so it didn't flow well. So it was hard to memorize.
Well, actually, the strangest the sentence and the image, the best way you can remember it in memorization theories. And when I learned how to memorize numbers and images and whatever, there was this famous book in Israel that everybody used, and he shows us 10 elements and show you how to memorize them by order. And I read it in 2001, and I still remember 3 from all the elements from 10, because it was just that crazy story that you can never forget.
Mm-hmm.
I think that had I pursued blind solving more actively, I probably would have ventured out into trying to expand like my vocabulary to have more options for some like letters I would struggle with for finding word options. But I was going to ask you guys too, because hearing all like, and hearing you talk about the 5 blind and everything, Mike Huey, does that name ring a bell with you?
Yeah.
He used to do like a 6 and 7 blindfold like 11 years ago. And I remember meeting him, where would that have been? I think it was in Nationals. Maybe it was the one in Ohio that I went to. Either way, I remember my dad he couldn't understand the concept of blind solving and just thought it was absolute just ridiculousness that somebody could memorize and solve a 7x7 blindfolded. And my dad actually made Mike Huey a bet and said, if you put up $100, I'll put up $1,000 to the fact that you can't solve it blindfolded. And Mike thought about it, and he ended up going for it. But I remember at that point, it was his success rate. He said he was pretty confident, but it wasn't like dialed in. So that's a funny memory that I have of that, because it just shows how it's advanced, and how I know that doing a 7x7 blindfolded is certainly an accomplishment, but I feel like it's not as groundbreaking as it was 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've even heard people talk about trying to make 6x6 blind, even 7 blind official events, just because more people are starting to get into it. How many cubes actually, what I related to like 4x4 and 5x5, isn't that kind of like doing three by
Four by four.
threes?
4x4 is like almost 3. It's like 50-ish in the 50s of like letters or targets or whatever.
Hmm.
5x5 is like in the range of like 5. But then there's also the thing that like it's a lot harder to trace those. But like in terms of memorization in general, it's about that. 6x6 I believe is around like 8 or so. I've gotten one success on 6 blind. But like the hard crazy thing about 6 and 7 blind is all the different layers. Like, okay, am I turning the right layer right now? I better be turning the right layer, and that's like the real like nightmare with those. You're like counting. Wait, which layer do I have to turn?
Is there then on even layered puzzles? Is there the parity like there is on just regular speed solving, or how is that dealt with?
With four blind, it's and 5 blind and stuff. Okay, so like there's always going to be some sort of parity sometimes on like your wings or something, whether it's 4 blind or 5 blind. It's just like the normal parity that you meet on 4x4, like if it's OLO or PLO, that like can occur in wings as well. It's just like 2 swapped. You might have that as well on 5x5, right? You might have 2 wings swapped, and you just do some sort of like parity algorithm to fix that. And it's occurs on both even and yeah, because you can have 2 swapped wings on 5x5, right, as well.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in 4x4, when you solve the centers, so you sometimes are left with 2 centers to switch, but then you can just take one of the other centers with the same color and with 3 cycles, you solve it. But you can't do that with the edges or corners, and that's where you have the parity issue.
Because that's basically a 3 cycle if you have like 2 centers like this. This is just this to this to this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So when we were talking about the equipment, cameras talk about magnets. Is there do you have a preference with magnetic puzzles, or is there even a different puzzle for blind than you prefer compared to regular solving, speed solving, I guess?
So for me, I actually like to use my 3x3, 4x4, and 5x5 mains for blind. I just always like feel is more comfortable with that. Like it's the cube of that like type that I'm most comfortable with. Like I can, cause like I feel like I'm not very good at memorizing 4x4 and 5x5 blindfolded fast. Like I see people way slower than me with way faster memorizations. So my PB on 5 blind is like 901, and I think my memorization was like 540 or something. So like I just turn as fast as I possibly can, like making like I know the memo as well as I can, and that's like how I solve it as fast as I can. So I just want to be like as comfortable with turning as fast as I possibly can on those events as I can. So the magnets really help. So like I could like just like flick the layer like and know that it's not gonna like be off by some sort, instead of like doing a lot more safe with a non-magnetic puzzle.
Why is it, I don't know if it is common anymore, just was, but I remember hearing a lot of people talk about how for blind you shouldn't have magnets. Well, what is that talk about?
Oh, I think I don't know if that's a thing for 4 and 5. I mean, I haven't heard of many people with 4 and 5 blind that don't use magnets. But on 3 blind, I think it just can help. Like certain people don't use magnets because it can help with like doing certain comms really quickly. Like some people like really, really loose and like non like that type of cubes, because it really helps with them trying to do their comms as fast as possible. But for my turning style, I think the magnets help.
Okay. And for you, do you have any because you've been cubing for at least longer than I have, and is there any specific cube that you go to for this kind of thing?
Because all the cubes are actually worn out at the end, so, and there's better cube that comes out whenever I need the new cube. So I never actually limit myself to a specific cube, but I usually don't use the best cubes ever for speed solving to do also blindfold, because I always figure that I might overshoot and then miss my place and don't know where I am. For blindfold, I do work very slowly, specifically in competitions, because I never want to mess up. And whenever I know that I have one of the solves pretty good and I'm pretty confident with that, so the next 2 or 3 solves that are left, I actually go as fast as I can. And if I DNF it or whatever, I still have a good solve along the way. So I'm not really particularly bad with that, but I can overshoot answer you. Say hello.
No problem. I was going to ask one more final question and then kind of wrap everything up so everyone can get some sleep.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask real quick about, for me, using, like, my blindfold is usually just something that's more silly, like this. And then even like headphones, I'll either have like in-ear earplugs as well as ear muffs, so it's super quiet, but then I can like feel like I can hear my own heartbeat. But then I try it without them,
Yeah.
and it's so open that like if I hear a sound, my brain goes to that and gets distracted. So I still have no idea what I want to do. I'm gonna kind of go down the line and ask if you have any preferred blindfold or earmuffs or what your thoughts on that. So Cameron, I'll start with you. What do you do when you solve blind?
I used to use earmuffs and just a simple blindfold, similar to what we sell at Speed Cube Shop. And actually, this is going to be interesting because right now at Speed Cube Shop, we are testing out earmuffs to sell in the store just to make it kind of easier to find everything you need for blind solving all in one spot. But I was going to ask, holiday season is coming up, we were contemplating doing like custom, like Halloween, Christmas blindfold. Would you guys think that's something that would be worth doing? Like, would you guys enjoy it as blind solvers, like having seasonal like blindfolds, or are you just kind of like, you'll stick to the ones that you use?
I mean, me personally, I just like my blindfold actually is just like some sort of like headband thing I found offline. I just need like a certain size that fits me, but I feel like a lot of people might like because like the sort of blindfold that looks a certain way because it would look pretty cool. I don't know. And a lot of people just starting into blind might want to get a blindfold like that and see that it's like a special with like a Halloween blindfold. That'd be cool, right?
Yeah, no, because we were just thinking about it, and obviously, who better to ask than you guys.
I don't really have a favorite of blindfold. Whatever cover my eyes and everything, it's okay because I almost always close my eyes even under the blindfold because I can concentrate better. And actually, because I always wear reading glasses. In one point in like 10 years ago, I tried to put on contact lenses so I can shave off a second for removing my my glasses and putting the cover. And actually, it did help me a bit, but then my eyes got more red than they should be because I was wearing all the time, so I moved it. But whatever closed my eyes, everything is okay. I don't really care. And for the hearing, yeah, it's pretty hard to concentrate when everybody's talking around. So earmuffs or even headphones with noise reduction is pretty standard now. What do you want?
Yeah. And now even with like shaving off a second, people will just nod their blindfold on instead of grabbing it to do an extra second. Although I remember at Nationals, they actually announced that you have to make sure your blindfold goes all the way on. If it's not, that's a DNF. So thank you, everyone. This was great. I want to kind of go through each person real quick. If you want any last thing to say, either words of advice or just thoughts or questions. So Cameron, do you have any last thing to say today?
Very interesting topic, being somebody that used to solve blind and is considering getting back into it. So I feel kind of privileged to hear it first. And Dror, thank you so much for your time. I was going to say, we'll send you over if you're interested in one of Sean's he has his own UCuber cube. So it's built exactly like how his main is. So you can give that a try and let him know what you think.
Well, it was really fun because it actually takes me back to a time when I was actually active in cubing. And I always think to myself, right now I can get back to it. Maybe I get better. Maybe I can just go to competition and everything. And then these guys shows up and takes all the time that I have. So it's an old phase in my life, but I still have a warm feeling in my heart for it. And it's nice to once in a while remember the old days and talk to people and see how the community is growing and adding more information and better records. So happy cubing, everyone.
Yeah, well, if you ever want fewest moves, just do it casually, but that's the new addiction for me. So I think you might enjoy that. You can just do it whenever you have time to get into it. Sean, do you have any last thing to say?
Yeah, I think it was a while ago. I like would see like your profile, and I think it was the Cubers documentary, and I was like, wow, like it. This is like before I was like even close to the times that you had in blind events. I was like, wow, like to get those times like that back then, like right at the very beginning, is like crazy. And I was like
Hmm.
impressed because it's like back then there wasn't very many like information with like blind solving, as you said. So like when I came about blind solving, I need lots of resources and help, or I probably never would have been able to do it. It's like I struggled a lot with trying to do that, so that's like pretty cool. Seeing people like you and like Chris Hardwick and Stefan Pachman and all of them like doing those blind solves all that time ago. But yeah, it was pretty cool to talk with you as well.
Well, thank you
Awesome.
everyone for being here. This was fantastic. The range of experience and stories was great. So thank you once again for everyone to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. It was lots of fun.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
All right. See you next time.